My entire life, my mother convinced me that I was fragile, that I was too sick to be like other kids, too vulnerable to be left alone. But now I know the truth. The only thing making me sick was her. From the day I was born, she kept me close. Not in a nurturing way, in a controlling one. I went with her everywhere, to hair appointments at 2, to dates at 3. I didn't even set foot in a classroom until I was 9. And the first time I did, she pulled me out during lunch the following week, saying she missed me too much. When I begged her to let me stay, to make friends, she burst into tears and said I was the only thing keeping her going. By the time I was 14, I had fallen behind academically. Entire grades were lost to absences she caused. That's when I started pushing back, sneaking out, saying no, meeting people who weren't her. And that's when I suddenly got sick. Very sick. I had no proof, but something felt off, like she'd slipped something into my food. Before I even had a chance to explain how bad I felt, she'd already called a doctor she trusted. He came to the house, barely spoke to me, and told me I had a rare neurological issue. No name, no tests, just orders. Don't leave the house. It's too dangerous. Suddenly, I was on bed rest. She pulled me out of school, filled the house with air purifiers, herbal drinks, immune boosters she made by hand, and for the first time in years, she seemed happy, creepy happy. You're safe now, she said. This is how things were meant to be. And that's how it was. For years. No one in my life but her. No fresh air. No contact with the outside world. By 18, I didn't even remember how to function without her. Except for one thing. One person. Jamie. We'd met online, in a support group for people with chronic illness. He was kind, always checked in, lived nearby. One day he asked to meet in person. I wanted to. Badly. So I lied. I told my mom I was walking to the corner store for one of her special drinks. The only place she ever let me go alone. When I got there, Jamie was waiting. He was warm, funny, and didn't care that I was awkward after years of isolation. For the first time in forever, I laughed so hard it hurt. He even walked me back. But as we turned the corner, we saw her. She was standing at the door, watching. When I walked up, she flung it open. "Who is that?" she yelled. "Just a friend," I said, trying to keep calm. But she was trembling. "You lied to me. You risked your health for a boy." And before I could stop myself, I said it. "I'm not sick." She slapped me, not hard, but enough to freeze me. For the first time, I locked myself in my room. She banged on the door until the house shook. Then silence. I texted Jamie. Everything. And he stepped in like a lifeline, helped me find an online therapist, connected me with others, sent me resources, support, courage. A few weeks later, I was gone. I'd found a small apartment and friends to help me move. When she found out, I expected rage. Instead, she cried. Told me I was making a huge mistake, that I'd fall apart without her, that I was selfish and ungrateful. But I finally told her the truth. She didn't take care of me. She needed me to feel needed. That broke something in her. She threatened to call for help, said I was unfit to live alone, but I left anyway. And the silence after was peace. The first thing I did on my own was book a doctor's appointment. A real one. A week later, I got a call. "Are you sitting down?" the doctor asked. "There's no sign of any neurological condition, but your blood work shows signs of exposure to a substance, something that mimics those symptoms. A slow, repeated dose over time. Have you been taking any supplements?" And just like that, my world shifted. It was her. I'd always feared it. Now I had proof. That night, I walked home in a daze. When I got to my door, there was a box waiting for me. No postage, just my name, in her handwriting. Inside was my old teddy bear, Mr. Buttons, and several bottles of the supplements she used to give me. There was also a letter, 8 pages long. She said I was making a terrible mistake, that if I started feeling symptoms again, I should take the pills and call her. She'd come get me, no questions asked. The letter was damp in places, like maybe she cried while writing it. But I wasn't moved. I dropped it, like it burned, and then I picked up my phone. Because this time, I'm the one telling the story. I grabbed the bottles and marched straight to the bathroom. One by one, I twisted the caps off and dumped everything into the toilet. The pills spun in the water, bright colors swirling like confetti, before they finally vanished. I flushed twice, just to be sure. Then I stood there, staring into the bowl like it could still reach back at me. My hands were trembling. I texted Jamie. She left more pills at my door. I flushed them. He replied instantly. Did you touch any of them? Just the bottles, I answered, suddenly paranoid. Wash your hands, and maybe call the police. That's evidence. It hadn't even crossed my mind. I scrubbed my hands raw, the lavender soap making me nauseous. It smelled too much like her. Then I called the non-emergency police line to report the delivery. The officer who answered sounded detached, just running through a checklist. He said someone would come by to collect the package, maybe tomorrow. I couldn't stand having it in the apartment another second, so I sealed everything back in the box and left it outside. That night, I had a nightmare. I was trapped in my old bedroom again. Humidifiers humming around me, filling the air with a glowing green mist. I couldn't breathe. And she was there, in the doorway, smiling that same calm smile. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. I woke up drenched in sweat, choking on air. My phone lit up on the nightstand. 3:17 a.m. A new message. From her. I know you're awake. You always wake up around 3. Your body is trying to tell you something. Let me help you, baby. My skin went cold. I crept to the window and peeked through the blinds. Her car was parked across the street, dark and silent. But she was there. I could see her silhouette in the driver's seat, just sitting, watching, waiting. I grabbed my phone and called 911. My mother is outside my apartment, I whispered. She's stalking me. I filed a report yesterday. I believe she's been making me sick for years. The dispatcher stayed calm, said help was on the way. I huddled in the corner of my room, away from all the windows, clutching the phone like a lifeline, my bare legs pressed into the rough carpet. 10 minutes later, flashing lights painted the walls in red and blue. 2 officers approached her car. I watched from the shadows as she gestured wildly, probably spinning some story about her poor, confused daughter. One officer nodded. The other called something in on the radio. Eventually, they had her drive away. Then one of them came to my door. Miss Chen? He said gently after knocking. I'm Officer Lewis. Can we talk? I opened the door a crack. He had kind eyes, but his voice was serious. Your mother says she's concerned about your mental health, that you've stopped taking medication, that you're having paranoid episodes. Of course. The perfect move. Paint me as unstable. That's not true, I said, my voice shaking. She's the one who's been giving me things. I have a doctor. There's a report. Please, I'm not imagining this. He studied me, then nodded. I see the report in the system. We've warned her not to return. If she does, call us immediately. And tomorrow, you should file for a restraining order. He left, but I couldn't sleep. I sat up researching until sunrise. Reading articles, medical case studies, stories of people, mostly mothers, who deliberately kept their children sick. For sympathy, for control, for attention. Some of those kids never made it out. Some never even knew. But I did. I escaped. I lived. And that morning, I walked into the courthouse with shaking hands but a clear goal. The place was massive. Cold marble floors, echoes bouncing off every surface. I got lost twice trying to find the right office, trailing signs that kept getting smaller and more confusing. Do you have documentation of the abuse? The clerk asked without even looking up from her screen. I have medical records, I said. Proof I was poisoned. And a police report. She handed me a stack of forms. Fill these out. The judge reviews emergency petitions at 2. I found a bench and started filling them in, the fluorescent lights above buzzing like angry bees. Some questions were easy. Name, address, relationship to the abuser. Others weren't. Describe the most recent incident of abuse. List all previous incidents. Why do you fear for your safety? How do you condense a lifetime of manipulation into a few boxes? How do you explain that every I love you was a lock? Every you need me another bar on the cage? I wrote until my hand ached, until the pen left marks in my skin, until finally, at 2:30, they called my name. The judge looked over the forms, an older woman with a calm voice, silver streaks in her hair, and glasses low on her nose. She flipped through the pages slowly. Her peppermint perfume somehow made the room feel less sterile. Then she looked up. This is a serious accusation, she said, and I looked back steady. Yes, it is. Poisoning over the course of several years? The judge's tone wasn't harsh. It wasn't gentle either, just neutral, focused. Yes, Your Honor, I replied. my voice barely carrying through the wood-paneled courtroom. She held out her hand. I passed her the lab results from my new doctor, trying not to show how much my fingers were trembling. These show the presence of multiple substances that shouldn't be in my system. He believes they were administered over a long period of time. The judge frowned, reading glasses catching the ceiling lights as she studied the pages. Then, without looking up, she said, "I'm granting a temporary protective order. Your mother is prohibited from contacting you or approaching your home, your workplace, anywhere within 100 yards. A full hearing will be scheduled in 2 weeks. You'll both have the opportunity to present evidence." She brought the gavel down with a sharp crack. I flinched at the sound. Relief hit me like a wave. A shield. Finally. "Miss Chen," the judge added just as I turned to leave, her voice soft but serious. "If what you're saying is true, you may want to consider pressing charges." I nodded, unable to speak. Just the thought of my mother in handcuffs, sitting in a courtroom like this one, it was too much to wrap my head around. I pushed open the heavy doors and stepped into the echoing hallway, the sound of them closing behind me like an exhale I'd been holding for years. That afternoon, the court officer served my mother with the order. By evening, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Relatives I barely knew, some I hadn't heard from in a decade, suddenly had a lot to say. "She's completely distraught," Aunt Diane said on speakerphone, her voice sharp, judgmental, like I'd just caused some massive family scandal. "We're all so worried. She says you've had a breakdown or something." Another call. Uncle Gary. I didn't even recognize his voice. "Hey, sweetheart, whatever disagreement you're having with your mom, this isn't the way to handle it, all right?" And then my grandmother, stern, distant, the woman who once visited when I was 12 and spent the entire time examining the house like a health inspector. "She gave everything to care for you," she said, guilt thick in her voice. "How could you repay her like this?" I stayed silent through most of the voicemails, but I answered when my grandmother called, tried to explain, tried to get someone to understand. She didn't listen. "You've been sick your whole life," she insisted. "Your mother kept us informed. The treatments, the setbacks, we saw the records." "They were fake," I said. "Or the doctor was in on it. I've seen someone new. They say I was never sick." My voice cracked from frustration, but she just sighed. "Oh, honey, that's your condition talking. Your mother warned us this might happen." I hung up and flung my phone across the room. It hit the wall with a dull crack, then slid to the carpet. Of course, Mom had told them everything. Spun the perfect story. A devoted caretaker. A daughter too fragile to live a normal life. She'd been building this version of events for years, and they all bought it. It made me feel more nauseous than any of the pills ever had. That night, Jaime showed up with groceries and that same quiet determination he always carried. "We need to start documenting everything," he said, unpacking vegetables I didn't even recognize. Bell peppers, carrots, zucchini, bright colors in a kitchen that had always looked like a hospital pantry. Every symptom, every doctor, every pill. "We need a timeline." I slumped at the table, cheek pressed to the wood. "What's the point?" I muttered. "No one believes me, not even my own family. They think I'm making this up." "I believe you," Jaime said firmly. "Your doctor believes you, and we're going to make sure the rest of the world does too." He placed a notebook and pen in front of me like we were about to solve a mystery. And in a way, we were. We spent hours going back through every memory, every strange restriction, every sudden relapse. Writing it all down hurt, but it also helped. It forced me to see things I hadn't noticed before. "Look at this," Jaime said, tracing a line between the entries. "Your symptoms always got worse after you tried to become more independent, like when you wanted to stay at school or make friends or apply to college." He was right. There was a pattern, a rhythm. Every time I stepped toward freedom, my body betrayed me. Or so I thought, but now I saw the truth. The decline wasn't my fault. It wasn't random. It was orchestrated. And finally, I had the pieces to prove it. "And your symptoms improved when you cooperated," Jaime continued gently. "When you agreed to drop out of school. When you stopped asking to leave the house." His voice wasn't accusatory, just steady, helping me see what I had been too close to recognize. A cold shiver ran down my spine. She wasn't just keeping me close. She was conditioning me, like training a pet. The thought made me feel hollow inside. "She was controlling you," Jaime corrected softly. "But you broke free. You are breaking free." His hand rested on mine, warm, grounding. The next morning, I had a follow-up appointment with my new doctor, Dr. Gupta. Her office was everything my old one wasn't. Bright, filled with sunlight, real plants in the corners, and drawings from kids pinned to a corkboard. She ran a few more tests, asked me more questions about my symptoms, my history. When she pressed the stethoscope to my chest, it was warm. Not like Dr. Marshall's, always ice cold. When she finally sat down across from me, she didn't hesitate. "Based on everything you've told me," she said calmly, "and what we're seeing in your results, I believe you were being given a mixture of substances. Likely something to induce nausea, laxatives for digestive issues, and possibly something like Vicine, which can cause weakness, dizziness, confusion." I swallowed hard. "Will it cause permanent damage?" Her eyes were kind. "I don't believe so. These types of substances typically don't leave lasting harm once exposure stops. But I'd like to keep monitoring you, just to be sure." She scribbled a few notes in my chart, her handwriting clear, measured. Unlike Dr. Marshall's near illegible scrawl. As I got up to leave, she handed me a small card. "It's for a support group," she said. "Survivors of medical abuse. They meet Thursdays, just down the block. It might help talking to people who've lived through something similar." The card was plain, black text on white cardstock. Nothing like the glossy brochures my mom used to hand me about wellness cleanses. I took it, nervous, but grateful. That Thursday, I went. It was only a few blocks from my apartment, the same neighborhood I used to only see through a car window, but it felt like 1,000 miles. Every step there felt like a challenge and a triumph. The group met in a small room at the community center. A circle of chairs, flickering fluorescent lights, a tray of store-bought cookies someone had tried to arrange nicely. There were only 6 people there, a teenage girl, an older man, a woman maybe my age with a buzz cut and a scar on her collarbone. Everyone looked like they'd lived through a storm and survived. The facilitator, Harper, greeted me with a warm smile and a firm handshake. "Would you like to introduce yourself?" she asked after I sat down. I hesitated. The chair creaked beneath me. "Victim? Survivor? Daughter?" "I'm Betty," I said finally. "My mother has a condition. She made me sick for most of my life. I didn't know until a few weeks ago." No one gasped. No one looked shocked. They just nodded. "When did you leave?" the older man asked, his hands resting on a cane but his voice full of strength. 3 weeks ago," I said. "I moved out." "Got a restraining order." "That's incredible," the woman with the scar said. "I didn't get out until I was 27. One by one, they shared their stories. Every detail different, but every theme the same. Control, isolation, medications they never needed, hospital visits that did more harm than help. Some had been trapped for years, others nearly their whole lives. "The hardest part for me," the teenager said, voice soft, "was accepting that what I thought was love was actually harm." She twisted a bracelet on her wrist, beads clinking. "I still miss her sometimes," I admitted, voice cracking. "Is that messed up?" "No," Harper said gently. "It's human. When someone is your whole world, even when they're hurting you, it's still a loss when you walk away." Her words unlocked something inside me. A quiet permission to feel what I needed to feel. All of it. When I left the meeting that night, I didn't feel fixed, but I didn't feel broken either. I felt seen. The next morning, I opened my inbox and froze. A new message from Dr. Marshall. My mom's old doctor, the one who first diagnosed me with that so-called neurological disorder. My hands trembled as I clicked it open. "Dear Ms. Chen, I understand you've made certain allegations about your mother and your treatment under my care. I want to assure you that all diagnoses and recommendations were based on the symptoms presented at the time. That said, I will be retiring next month and closing my practice. If you wish to request copies of your medical records, please do so promptly. No apology, no accountability, just a retreat." But this time I wasn't the one running, because I finally had the truth, and I wasn't afraid to say it anymore. "Please contact my office within the next 2 weeks. Sincerely, Edward Marshall, MD." The language was cold and formal, but it couldn't hide what was really going on. He was retreating, quietly, quickly. I stared at the email on my screen, reading it once, twice, a third time. Each line stung more than the last. He was running. I forwarded it to Jaime with a single sentence. "He's running." Jaime called instantly. "This is good," he said, voice sharp with focus. It means he's nervous. We need to request your file before anything disappears. I hadn't even thought of that. The next day, we walked into Dr. Marshall's office together, a place I hadn't seen in years, but recognized immediately. Same plastic chairs, same fading wall art, same artificial citrus smell clinging to the air. The receptionist was new. Brightly painted nails, bored expression, fast clicks on the keyboard. "Fill this out," she said, handing me a records request form. "There's a $25 fee." I paid in cash. My stomach turned at the thought of how many other people might have sat in this waiting room, completely unaware of what was being done to them. "It'll take a few days," she added, sliding me a carbon copy of the request. "We'll call you when it's ready." As we turned to leave, a door behind the counter creaked open. Dr. Marshall stepped out. He froze when he saw me. For a moment, his face went pale, the confident doctor mask slipping before he forced it back into place. "Betty," he said, voice even. "How are you feeling?" "Better," I replied. "Much better since I stopped the treatments you and my mother insisted I needed." His fake smile tightened. "Well, I'm glad to hear that. If you'll excuse me..." I moved in front of him, calm, but unmovable. "Did you know?" I asked, my voice steady. "Did you know what she was giving me? Or did she fool you too?" He looked at the receptionist, who had clearly stopped typing. "I think you're confused about your condition," he said quickly. "We can discuss this in private if you'd like." "There's no need," I said. "The police will be in touch." He flinched, just slightly, but I saw it. "Be careful," he said, dropping the charm completely. "Unfounded accusations can carry legal consequences." It was a warning, but it didn't scare me anymore. Jaime placed a hand lightly on my arm. "Come on, let's go." Outside, the sun was bright and unkind. The noise of the street felt like static. My hands were shaking. "He knew," I muttered. "He had to know." Jaime nodded. "Let's get the files first, then we'll know what we're dealing with." 3 days later, I got the call. "Your records are ready." When I picked them up, the receptionist avoided eye contact, sliding a flimsy folder across the counter. It felt too light, too thin. "This can't be everything," I said. I was his patient for 3 years. "That's what we have on file," she said flatly. Inside the folder, a few intake forms, vague notes about fatigue and possible neurological concerns, prescriptions for harmless vitamins. Nothing about the treatments I'd been told were essential. Nothing about the endless tests. Nothing real. Either the files had been sanitized, or nothing legitimate had ever existed. Still, I brought the folder to the police station and added it to the case file. Detective Perez sat across from me, surrounded by a fortress of paperwork and family photos on a dusty shelf. She read through everything carefully. "This helps," she said, "but it's not enough on its own. Without concrete evidence of intent, proving criminal wrongdoing is hard. Your mother could argue she genuinely thought she was helping, that she believed you were sick." "She knew," I said, my voice rising. "And so did he." "I believe you," she said gently. "But belief and evidence aren't the same. We're going to keep looking, but you should prepare yourself for the possibility that this might not result in charges." I left the station drained. Outside, the day was fading. Long shadows stretched across the parking lot like reaching arms. I felt like I was walking through water, thick, slow, heavy. That night, the nightmares returned. In the dream, I was back in my old bedroom, but when I tried to speak, no sound came out. Something thick was caught in my throat. My lungs burned, and she was there, calm, composed, standing in the doorway as I struggled, watching, always watching. I woke up gasping, sheets tangled like restraints, my throat dry and aching. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A new message, from her. "I found your old symptom journals. Remember how you used to document everything? In your own handwriting. It would be a shame if the court saw that. Come home." I stared at the screen, frozen. She wasn't done. Not yet. "We can work this out as a family." Those words glowed on my screen, quiet and menacing, as if whispered straight into my bedroom in the middle of the night. I knew exactly what she meant. It was never a conversation. It was always a warning. For years, she had made me keep journals, page after page of symptoms, all written in my own handwriting. Every migraine, every wave of nausea, every dizzy spell. At the time, I thought I was being proactive. that I was tracking my illness. But now I knew better. The symptoms always followed her treatments, and the journals that were meant to help me were now her weapon. I forwarded the email to Detective Perez with trembling hands, then immediately called Jaime. He picked up on the fourth ring, his voice thick with sleep. "She's threatening to use my journals," I said quietly, my throat tight. "She's going to use my own words against me." There was a pause. Then Jaime surprised me. "That's actually good," he said. "It proves she's still trying to control the story, still trying to manipulate. That supports your case. And if we can match the symptoms in those journals to the times she gave you something, it might help us more than it hurts us." His logic made sense, but it didn't make the fear go away. "What if people believe her?" I whispered. "What if I escaped physically, but I'm still trapped in her version of reality?" "Then they're wrong," he said without hesitation. "And we'll keep going until we find people who see the truth." The next morning, I forced myself to walk to the corner store. It was the only place I'd ever been allowed to go alone, and just putting one foot in front of the other felt like an act of defiance. The air was damp from the rain, and puddles reflected the gray sky like mirrors. I grabbed a bottle of water and headed to the counter, then froze. Her car was parked across the street. Same blue sedan, half hidden under a tree, but unmistakable. I ducked behind a candy display, heart racing. She was violating the restraining order. Again. I texted Jaime, "She's outside, watching." Then I dialed 911, speaking low as I described where I was and what I saw. The smell of sugary candy around me only made my nausea worse. The dispatcher told me to stay put. Officers were on their way. I peeked around the edge of the shelf. She was still there, staring at the entrance. That same intense look she always had when she was about to say no. When I asked to stay at school. When I mentioned wanting to go to college. When I dreamed out loud about a life that didn't include her. That look always came before a relapse. The store owner, Mr. Kumar, noticed me crouched down. He stepped around the counter, his brow furrowing. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. I'd been the quiet girl with the tired eyes and careful posture for years. He knew me. "My mother's outside," I whispered. "She's not supposed to be here." "There's a court order." He went to the window, saw the car. His expression darkened. "Stay in the back," he said quickly, nodding toward the stockroom. "Let the police deal with it." I tucked myself behind crates of snacks and bottled water, the air thick with the scent of cardboard and spice. A fan buzzed weakly in the corner. I watched through a high window, just in time to see police lights bounce off the storefront glass. 2 officers approached the car. I couldn't hear what they said, but I saw her gesture wildly. Then one of them turned and came into the store. "Betty Chen?" he called. I stepped out slowly. "That's me." "I'm Officer Martinez," he said, flipping open a small notepad. "Your mother says she was just stopping to make a phone call. Claims she didn't know you were inside." "That's a lie," I said, voice firm. "This is the only store I was ever allowed to go to. She knew I'd be here." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "We're going to detain her for violating the order. Would you be willing to come to the station to make a statement?" I nodded. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to safety. At the station, I gave my statement. They processed her in a room down the hall. Everything smelled like cold tile and stale paper. The chairs were stiff, the table bolted to the floor. Detective Perez met me there, coffee in one hand, a pen in the other. "This helps," she said, scanning the report. "Shows a pattern. The DA might take a stronger interest now." She scribbled more notes into the growing file, and just as I was about to leave, I saw her, through a hallway window, flanked by 2 officers. Our eyes met, and for the briefest second, I expected to see anger or even guilt. But there was neither. Only something worse. That same twisted tenderness, like she still believed she loved me, like she still believed I was hers. She mouthed the words across the glass. "You'll come back to me, you always do." But I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I walked out of that building knowing one thing with absolute clarity. Not this time. Not ever again. I walked out into the sunlight determined, not just to leave the station, but to leave everything behind. The weight I'd been carrying for years suddenly felt a little lighter as the heavy doors closed behind me. That night, Jaime and a few of his friends came over with pizza and board games. A small, ordinary evening. Something I'd never had before. It was their way of giving me a taste of the life I'd missed. The room filled with the smell of melted cheese and tomato sauce. the hum of conversation and easy laughter making my small apartment feel warmer than it ever had. At first, I felt out of place. I didn't know the rules, didn't understand the jokes, couldn't follow the movie references everyone seemed to know, but they were patient. Autumn, with her purple hair catching the light, explained each game twice, never once making me feel slow. Lewis filled me in on pop culture stuff without making it awkward. And Cameron asked questions about me, what I liked, what I was interested in, as if my preferences actually mattered. By the end of the night, I was laughing, fully, freely. My cheeks hurt from smiling, something I wasn't used to. We left the empty pizza boxes on the table, game pieces scattered, and for the first time in my life, I felt something I'd never truly had. A sense of belonging. After everyone left, Jaime stayed to help clean up. We moved around the kitchen in quiet rhythm, wiping counters and boxing leftovers. Thank you, I said, my voice quiet, for everything. I really don't know where I'd be without you. He didn't pause. You would have found your way. You're stronger than you realize. I looked down at my hands, folding a napkin into smaller and smaller squares. I don't feel strong. I feel scared. All the time. He closed the cabinet door and turned to me. Being scared and being strong aren't opposites, he said gently. They go together. You're doing all of this despite being afraid. That is strength. His words sat with me long after he left. That maybe getting out of bed, making that phone call, filing those reports, maybe all of that counted as courage I hadn't noticed in myself. The silence in the apartment wasn't heavy that night. It was calm. For once, quiet didn't feel like isolation. It felt like peace. 2 days later, my phone rang. Aunt Diane. Her voice was different this time, hesitant, softer. Betty, I need to tell you something about your mother. I braced myself. When you were little, before all of this, she did the same thing to your father. I sat down, the room seeming to shrink around me. What? It was the only word I could find. He was healthy when they met. Then, he started getting sick. Nobody could figure out why. Your mother managed all his care, gave him his medication. He got worse and worse. Eventually, they said it was complications from an illness. He died when you were 2. I didn't say anything. My thoughts were moving too fast to speak. She told us he left, I finally whispered. That he didn't want a family. I believed her, Aunt Diane said, her voice cracking. But after hearing what you've been through, I went through some of his things. I found a journal. He was writing about his symptoms, and about her. He said he felt better when she was gone. Worse when she came back. I could barely breathe. Do you still have it? I asked. Yes. And if you need me to speak in court, I will. I should have seen it earlier. I'm so sorry, Betty. Her voice was filled with regret, but the damage had already been done. After we hung up, I sat in the dark, the silence pressing in from every direction. My father, maybe her first victim, maybe not the last. I didn't know what was more devastating, what she'd done, or how long she'd been getting away with it. I texted Jaime. My father, she did it to him too. He died. His reply came instantly. I'm coming over. No questions, no delays. When he arrived, we didn't speak for a while, just sat on the couch, the sounds of life outside our walls, traffic, neighbors, the hum of a normal world, contrasting with the storm inside me. She's never going to stop, I said finally. Even if I get the order, even if she's charged, she'll keep trying. Jaime looked at me, steady and sure. Then we keep stopping her, every time, until she can't reach you anymore. And for the first time since this began, I believe that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't fighting this alone. I stepped out into the sun, pushing through the courthouse doors with more than just effort. It felt like I was leaving years of weight behind me, years of doubt, fear, and silence, gone, or at least, fading. That night, Jaime and a few friends came over with pizza and games, their way of giving me a taste of something I never thought I'd have, a normal evening. The room filled with laughter and the scent of melted cheese, and for a while, my apartment didn't feel like a place I was hiding in. It felt like a home. I didn't get the jokes at first, didn't know the games, couldn't keep up with the references to shows and movies I'd never been allowed to watch. But no one made me feel out of place. Autumn explained every game twice with kindness. Lewis helped me understand the jokes without talking down to me. And Cameron? He asked what I liked, like I had opinions worth sharing. By the end of the night, I was laughing so hard my face ached, and I realized I hadn't just survived. I had begun. Belonging, warmth, connection, all the things I thought were out of reach, suddenly felt possible. After everyone left, Jaime stayed to help clean up. We worked in quiet rhythm, rinsing plates, folding napkins. I looked over at him. "Thank you," I said, "for everything. I don't know if I could have done this without you." He smiled. "You could have. You just didn't know it yet." "I don't feel strong," I admitted. "Most of the time, I just feel scared." He set down the plates. "Being scared and being strong, those aren't opposites. The fact that you're scared and still doing it, that's strength." And for the first time, I believed him. 2 days later, I got a call. It was Aunt Diane. Her voice sounded different this time. Hesitant, heavy. "Betty," she said quietly, "there's something I need to tell you. About your mother." I braced myself. "She did this before. To your father." The air left my lungs. "What?" "When they met, he was healthy. But then the symptoms started. Strange ones. The doctors were confused. She took over his care, gave him all his meds, and he just kept getting worse. He passed away when you were 2. She always told me he left us," I whispered, "that he didn't want to be a father." "I believed her too," Diane said, her voice breaking. "But I found a journal while going through old boxes. It's his. He wrote about how he felt better whenever she was away, and worse when she came back." The room spun. "Do you still have it?" "Yes," she said. "And if you need me to speak in court again, I will." After we hung up, I sat frozen. She hadn't just hurt me. She'd done it before, maybe even perfected it. I texted Jaime, "My father. She did it to him too. He's gone." His reply was instant. "I'm coming." When he arrived, we sat in silence. I didn't need words, just presence. Just someone to help keep me grounded as the world shifted beneath my feet again. "She's not going to stop," I said finally. "Even with the restraining order. Even with the charges. She'll keep trying." Jaime looked me in the eyes. "Then we'll keep stopping her. Every time. Until she can't anymore." And I believed that too. The day of the final hearing came. I wore my yellow sundress, the same one she used to call too bright. It felt lighter this time. Like a statement, not a costume. Jaime, Autumn, and Louis came with me. Aunt Diane was already there, holding the worn leather journal with a yellow sticky note marking a page. My dad's journal, my proof, my truth. When my mom walked in, she looked polished, composed, all soft pastels and practiced sorrow. The moment she saw me, she slipped into the role I knew too well. "Betty, honey," she called out across the courtroom. "It's not too late. We can fix this." But I looked away. The hearing began. My lawyer presented everything. The lab results, the expert testimony, the police report, and then Aunt Diane read aloud from my father's journal, her voice steady even as it cracked on certain lines. Then came the crossfire. Her lawyer tried to twist the story, said I was unstable, that my own journals proved I was ill. I watched pages of my childhood be projected onto a screen, in my own handwriting, not realizing then I was documenting symptoms she had caused. But when I took the stand, I found my voice. "I wrote what I experienced," I said. "But those symptoms always followed something my mother gave me. And they went away when she wasn't around." The courtroom went silent. My mother cried on the stand, spoke of sacrifice, of devotion, said I was being manipulated by people who didn't understand our bond. Her performance was perfect, but I didn't flinch. Then the judge called recess. I waited in the hallway, legs trembling, Jaime beside me. "Whatever happens," he said, "you've already won." I nodded, and I believed that too. We were called back in. The judge's voice was firm. "I find sufficient cause to grant a permanent restraining order. Ms. Chen is to have no contact with the petitioner and must remain no less than 500 yards from her residence, workplace, or place of education." I exhaled, but the judge wasn't finished. "This case is being referred to the district attorney's office for review of potential criminal charges, including intentional harm and abuse." The courtroom stayed silent until my mother stood, her mask cracking. "You can't do this to me," she screamed. "You'd be nothing without me. You'll come back when you get sick again. You will get sick again. You need me." Officers took her by the arms, guiding her from the room as she shouted, "You need me! You need me!" And for the first time, I didn't believe her. For a moment, doubt tried to slip in. The voice she planted long ago. What if she's right? What if I can't live without her? But then, Jaime's hand found mine. You don't need her, he whispered. You never did. Outside the air was fresh, the sun was warm, and I knew this wasn't the end. She would try again. The investigation wasn't over, but I had taken the first real step out of her shadow and into my life. I pulled out my phone, blocked every unknown number, deleted her contact. What now? Jaime asked as we stood on the courthouse steps. I looked up at the clear blue sky. The world felt wide open. Now? I said. Now I find out who I am. Without her. The words tasted like freedom, like my own voice, like the beginning.